Stop the endless cycle of forgetting. What if you could learn anything and retain it forever? This video unveils powerful techniques that will transform your brain into a knowledge powerhouse, helping you to master anything 10 times faster and change how you learn forever. I realize we are living in this golden age of access. We have the sum of human knowledge right in our pockets. If I want to know the capital of 14th century Mali or how to fix a leaky faucet, I can find the right answer in like 3 seconds. But here is the problem. Even with the access to vast amounts of information at our fingertips, most professionals and learners feel like they know less than they did 10 years ago. It is like their brain has become a sieve. Information just pours in, they use it, and then it just evaporates. I just described the defining paradox of our time. We have traded retention for access. Yes, in cognitive science, they often talked about this as a difference between renting knowledge and owning it. And the problem is that when you rent knowledge, you can't really build on it. You can't have complex thoughts or creative breakthroughs with data that isn't actually stored in your neural networks. So in this video, the mission is to cancel the lease. I will walk you through how to actually hone information again with Ferriss, paper from Frontier in Psychology, stuffs on Feynman Techniques, and some heavy-hitting study tips from Harvard University. We are going to build what I called a super learner protocol, and some of these goes against everything you are taught in school because this is the right way to learn. So if you want to stop being a sieve, where information just goes in, uses, and just evaporates, we have to start with the enemy, and the enemy is the forgetting curve. This is a real scientific term identified by Feynman Technique way back in the 1880s and is still hold up. Basically, it maps how quickly we lost information after we learn it, and the slope is terrifying that within 24 hours of learning something new, if you don't actively review it, you forget about 50 to 80% of it. Which means if you spend an hour reading a report today, by tomorrow you have wasted 48 minutes of that hour. And this is why cramming, which is how most of us survive college, is so biologically flawed. You might store the information in your short-term memory for a test, but you haven't signaled to your brain that this information is important. So your brain just purges it. It views that information as metabolic waste. So the question here is, if your brain is trying to throw out the trash, how do you convince it that the trash is actually treasure? What you need to do is to interrupt the forgetting curve, and the solution is called spaced repetition. I know you have heard of this before, but the nuance is really in the timing. This is the algorithm of flashcard, and it relies on a neurological process called reconsolidation. See, here's the thing. Memory aren't statics. They aren't little video files sitting on a hard drive. Every single time you recall a memory, you are literally reconstructing it. You are pulling it out from the filing cabinet, looking at it, and then rewriting it before putting it back. So the act of remembering actually changes the memory. It strengthens the pathway. It is like walking through a forest. The first time you have to head through the bushes, it is hard work. But if you walk that same path again in a few days later, it is little clearer. But if you waited a year, it's overgrown again. The trick is to walk the path just as it's starting to overgrow. The spaced repetition proposes very specific schedule for this. It is 1-3-7-2-1 protocol. 1-3-7-21. It is simpler than it sounds. You learn something today, you review it tomorrow. That is the one. That is your first interruption of the curve. Then you review it 3 days later. Then 7 days after that. And finally, 21 days later. By then, it's usually locked into long-term storage. You might only need to review it once every few months or even year after that. Practically speaking, I recommend tools like Anki or Quizlet, popular for handling scheduling for you. You just open the app and it shows you the card you are just about to forget. But even if you are using low-tech paper, flashcard, or a notebook, the principle matters more than the tools. Reviewing something 4 times in a day is nowhere near as effective as reviewing it 4 times over a month. So it is the spacing that does the heavy lifting, not the repetition itself. Because you have to let the concrete dry a little bit before you add another layer. But this process brings us a capacity issue. Now, you might be thinking you can't do this for everything you are learning. You can't use spaced repetition for every news article or every email. You are absolutely right. You cannot be a super learner if you are trying to learn everything. You have to be ruthless about selection, which brings us to the second pillar, strategic laziness. It is the 80-20 rules, the Pareto principle. We know the backstory, the Pareto, the peace, the land ownership, but we rarely apply it correctly to learning. 20% of the effort gives 80% of the result. But how do you actually find the 20% if you pick up a textbook on quantum physics? How do you know which 20% matters? This is the hardest part. The source from Ferriss gives us a masterclass in this with language learning. When he decided to learn Japanese, he didn't start with, "Hello, how are you?" No. The note says that he used judo manuals. He knew he would actually read the judo manuals because he was interested in judo, a standard textbook. He did get bored and quit. So, step 1 of the 80-20 rules is, what material will I actually stick with? A huge part here is that engagement is part of the efficiency equation. Ferriss got analytical. He looked at frequency list, and this is a data point that always blows mind. In English language, the top 100 most frequently written words make up 50% of all the written material. Just 100. The, and, of, to, a. You master just those 100. You can recognize half of the words on any given page. That feels like a cheat code. And the top 300 accounts for about 65% of the total. So, Ferriss argues, why spend weeks memorizing encyclopedia when you haven't mastered the top 300 that act as the glue for the entire language? So applying that to language, to coding or marketing, it means ignoring the edge cases. If you are learning Excel, don't try to memorize every single statistical function, master VLOOKUP and pivot tables. That is your 20% that solves 80% of your problem. So filter aggressively, ignore the trivial many to focus on the vital few. You filter with 80-20 and then you apply spaced repetition only to the vital 20%. That is how you manage it. So this brings us to the part of the research that really surprised me, the stuff's frontiers in psychology, because it completely flips the idea of testing on its head. This is the forward effect. This is my favorite part of the stack because it is just so counterintuitive. They found that testing actually primes your brain to learn new information better. Let me walk you through the study to make sure you get the mechanism here. So researchers took two groups of students, a testing group and a restudy group. They gave them list of words to memory, list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4. The restudy group will study list 1 and then just study it again. Simple enough, right? The testing group will study list 1 and then immediately get a quiz on it. This sounds stressful and most people will prefer to be in the restudy group. But here's the twist. After they went through all the 4 lists, both groups were given a brand new list, which is the list 5. Both groups studied it and then both were tested on it. The testing group, the one who had been quizzed on the previous list, recalled double the amount of the information from the list 5 compared to the restudy group. In this situation, the researchers identified a couple of things happening neurologically. One is related to alpha power oscillation. In plain English, think of it like your brain screenshot mode. When you are passive reading, just scanning lines of text, your brain starts to tune out. Alpha wave increase. You know that feeling well, which is called zombie reading. You get to the bottom of the page and realize you have processed nothing. But on the other hand, a test acts like a shock to the system. It disrupts those alpha waves. It forces the brain to wake up and say, oh, I need to pay attention now. It resets your attention span. So the test is a reset button, and the testing group's brain were fully engaged for list 5, while the rest of the group's brain was still half asleep. There is also this factor of segregation. If you just study list after list, they bleed out together. You get source confusion. Was Apple in this list 1 or list 2? Testing puts a hard mental border around the information. It files list 1 away, close the drawer, and clear the decks for the list 2. In simple terms, don't study 4 hours and then test yourself. Test yourself every 20 minutes, not to grade yourself, but to clear the cache so that you have space for the next chunks of information. This is the act of priming the brain with tests. But there is a danger here. You can pass a test. You can memorize the definition of a word without actually understanding what it means. We have done it a million times, right? We can recite the jargons, but we don't really know the concept. This is called the illusion of competency. It is the most dangerous trap for learners and professionals who are trying to learn new skills and concepts. You read the book, you recognize the word, so you think you know the material, but recognition is not mastery. So how do you debug this? How do you know if you are just parroting words or if you actually hone the knowledge? This is where we turn to Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winner physicist. He believed you didn't really understand something until you could explain it in really simple terms. This is the teach a child method, and the rule is strict. No jargons, that is the killer, because jargons is usually where we hide our ignorance. If I say the synergy of the paradigm shift leverage the KPI, I haven't actually said anything. I'm just hiding behind the buzzwords. Feynman's algorithm is simple. Step 1 is to pick the concepts. Step 2, teach it to a child or a rubber duck using simple language. Step 3, the moment you get stuck, the moment you reach for a buzzword because you can't find a simple word SOP. That is your gap, and that brings us to step 4. Go back to the source material and fill that specific gap. It is learning by failure. You are actively looking for the breaking point in your own logic, and here is a really cool update to this now. Because we now have access to all these AI tools, and the temptation is just to say, hey Siri or Gemini, explain quantum mechanics to me like I'm 5, which is just an act of renting knowledge. Don't do that. The recent Feynman techniques flip the script. You write the explanation, you do the hard work of trying to simplify the concept, then you paste your explanation into AI and says, critics this. Tell me where my analogy breaks down. This creates feedback loop, which is where the real learning happens. So instead of AI being the teacher, the AI is the hacker. Asking AI is renting. Struggling to explain it yourself is owing. And this is the bumper sticker for this video. We have covered a lot of tactics, flashcard, 80-20, testing, and Feynman, but I want to spend a minute on the hardware, the biologic machine for doing all of this. There are sources from Harvard University that touched on the ecosystem of learning. This is the foundation. You can't run high-performance software on a broken hardware. And the number one hardware failure is sleep. The research is irrefutable. Sleep is not just resting. When you are awake, you are gathering information, which is stored temporarily in the hippocampus. It is like a USB stick. It has limited capacity, and sleep is when you transfer it to the hard drive. During this sleep, the brain moves the data from the hippocampus to the cortex for long-term storage. It clears out the hippocampus for the next day. If you cut sleep short to study an extra hour, you are literally preventing the save process. You are doing the work and then not clicking save. It is the most inefficient study method possible. And the other big environmental factor is metacognition. Think about thinking. It sounds abstract, but it is so crucial. A super learner is constantly auditing their own process. They ask, why am I not getting this? Do I need a diagram? Do I need another source? Whereas a passive learner just keep reading the same page over and over, hoping it will stick. Why active learner change the strategy when it is not working? It is taking agency over the process, and I saw that in a corporate training source too. Success isn't measured by whether you watch the training video for the completion rate, which is the ultimate vanity metrics. 100% of employees watch the cybersecurity video, but did they stop clicking on phishing emails? The real metrics is time to competency and behavioral change, which apply to us as individuals too. Don't measure your learning by how many books you read this year. Measure it by what can I do now that I couldn't do last year. If your behavior hasn't changed, you haven't learned, you are just being entertained. So let's bring this all together. I've thrown a lot at you. If you want to move from renting to owning, let me stack it up for you. Step 1, selection. Be lazy. Use the 80-20 rules. Don't try to drink the ocean. Find the vital few drop that matters. Step 2. Priming. Use the forward effect. Test yourself constantly, not to judge yourself, but to reset your attention and create space for the new info. Step 3. Retention. The 1-3-7-21 schedule. Use spaced repetition to beat that forgetting curve. Catch the memory just as it's fading. And step 4. Mastery. The Feynman Techniques. Explain it simple. Write it down, then use AI to ruthlessly critique your understanding, not to do the work for you, and underpin all of it with sleep. Please get some sleep. Before I wrap up this video, I keep thinking about the concepts of renting and owning. In a world where AI can generate a passable answer to any question in seconds, I believe knowing things is becoming the only competitive advantage because AI can give you the average of all human knowledge. It can give you the standard answer, but the true creativity, insight, that comes from connecting two unrelated ideas that are already sitting in your brains. You can connect two ideas if you have to Google them first. You can have a shower thought about information that isn't already in your head. The goal isn't just to be a hard drive. It is to build a unique library in your mind so you can make connections that no one else and no AI can make. So the question for you to answer in the comment section is, are you building a library in your mind, or you are just creating a list of bookmarks? Something to chew on. If you want to build AI as your honest critic and start owning information, look out for my next video. In it, I will take you through the step-by-step guide on how to build AI tools as your honest brutal thinker partner to review your blind spots that enhance your critical thinking and making your plans realistic. You can watch it next. See you there, and be sure to like and subscribe.